While contrary to functions, each and every functions in a program will return value, but constructor do not return any values. There are three types of constructors. They are default constructors, parameterized constructor, and copy constructors. The constructors are invoked explicitly. This is one method of invoking constructor. Dear students, welcome to Computer Science Revision classes. I am Ravi Kumar KR, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram PU College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Students, let us start our discussion with the chapter Constructors and Destructors, chapter number 9. Now, the weightage of a chapter is 8 marks. Here, one MCQ or 1 mark question, and two 2 marks question, and one 5 marks question. So here it is weightage of the chapter is 8 marks. Now in this chapter, let us cover the important concept of the chapter Constructors and Destructors. So we are going to cover constructors, types of constructors, constructor overloading, and destructors. Let us start with the definition of what is a constructor. A constructor is a special member function used in a class to initialize the object of a class automatically. So what is a constructor? It is a member function used to initialize the object of a class automatically. Now it is a special member function used to initialize and destroy the object of a class automatically so that memory can be utilized effectively. So another advantage is that memory can be utilized effectively, and automatic initialization is carried out using such a special member function called constructor. So with the help of constructor, it is possible to automatically initialize the object of a class. So constructor is a special member function used to initialize the object of a class automatically. A constructor always has the name that is same as the class name. So one of the character is that. So it has the same name as that of class. They are the members. They will help the compiler to identify they are the constructor. Now how do compiler understand the constructor? Because constructor has the same name as that of class. There is no return type for constructor. Another important point is that constructor do not return any value, or it doesn't have any return type. While contrary to functions, each and every functions in a program will return value, but constructor do not return any values, and it should be declared in public section. So this is another property, and a constructor is invoked automatically when the objects are created. Now we know what are functions, how do we invoke the functions. But here similarly we have to invoke even the constructor also. But how it is to be invoked? And the constructors are invoked automatically when the objects are created. I mean, we know that what is an object? We have to create an object of a class. So as soon as we create an object of a class, this will be invoked automatically. Now constructors can have default arguments. Now we know what are arguments. So constructor can have default arguments, and it is not possible to refer to the address of the constructor. So another point is that we cannot refer to the address of the constructor, and constructors make implicit calls to the operators new and delete when memory is allocated is required. Here there are two, one is new operator and delete operators. So constructor make implicit calls to these operators. So these are all about the points or characteristics of a constructor. Now let us see an example for this. So here class test, this is the name of a class, and class opened here, and we are closing the class here. In between we have data members, and under public we have test, open the bracket, x equal to 0 and y equals to 0, close the bracket. and close the bracket with semicolon. So if you observe this here, test is the name of the class. So this is one of the properties or one of the characteristics of a constructor, means a constructor has the same name as that of class. So by looking at this, we can make out it is a constructor, and inside that we are initializing the data members. And constructor, this is inside the class definition. So we have written a definition of this constructor inside the class definition, and note down that it is declared under public access specifier. So this is an example for how to declare a constructor or how to define a constructor in a class. Now let us see in a simple example. Here, example to display two numbers. So let us see the example program here. The program starts with the header files, then class example. Here the two variables a and b. These are called variable declaration. Under public we have example. So example is the same name as that of class, so it is a constructor. And here we are defining the constructor inside the class. So accordingly, we have given the values for these variables, a equal to 10, b equals to 20. Then we are closing the constructor here. Then void displays another function, and here printing or we are displaying the values of a and b. Close the function and close the class with semicolon. So this is a simple definition of a class and a constructor inside a class. Now in the main function, void main. So first step is creation of an object here, example object. So here example is name of a class, and this is object is an object here. So here, as soon as the object is created, the constructor is called automatically. That's what you have seen in our introduction to the constructor. So this is constructor invoked or invoking constructor by creating an object here. Next one is object.display. We are calling the function, this is the function display. So accordingly, it is going to print values of 10 and 20, or values of a and b as 10 and 20. So first one is we call the get data function, compute, display, and get ch, close the void main function here. So this is the output of this program. So this is an example program to show the working of constructors in a class. Now in the next slide, we will see the next concept is types of constructors. There are three types of constructors. They are default constructors, parameterized constructor, and copy constructors. Now let us discuss these definitions or constructors one by one. Now first one is default constructor. So what is default constructor? A constructor which does not accept any argument is called zero argument constructor or default constructor. So definition is that with which does not accept any argument, no argument. Look at the syntax and example here. Syntax, class, class name, open the bracket, public, under public we are writing here class name semicolon. So this is class name and the same class name, so it is a constructor, and here inside this no argument, it is called as default constructor, and we are closing the class here. An example here, class add, name of a class. Under private we have a, b, some other variables. Under public we have add. Here add is the name of the class, and here it is a constructor. And in this example, in the parameters, no parameters, so it is a default constructor. And here inside this we have sum equal to 0 and closing the class with semicolon. So this is an example for default constructor where it does not accept any argument. Next one is parameterized constructor. The syntax is class, class name, private, int b. Under public we have class name, and inside this we have int a is one argument. So class name and this class name are same, so it is a constructor, and it has a one argument, that is one parameter, int a, and we are assigning values inside this and closing the class with semicolon. Look at the example here. class add private int a b sum, and a public add int x comma int y. So if you observe this, this is a constructor with two parameters or two arguments, and inside this we are assigning the values and close the class with semicolon. So this is called as parameterized constructors. I mean the constructor which accepts an arguments or parameters is defined as a parameterized constructor. Next one is another type of constructor, that is copy constructor. So what is a copy constructor? It is a parameterized constructor using which one object can be copied to another object. So that is the definition of a copy constructor. Look at the syntax of this: class name, and this is scope resolution operator, and class name and pointer. Here and is operator, address of operator. So here class name and object here. So the meaning is that this is the constructor with argument, and observe this, inside the argument we have object here. So this is the definition of copy constructor. In the example, class add private variables a b sum, and the public we have add bracket add ampersand obj. So if you observe this, here add is name of the class, and here obj is an object of a class add here. So if you observe this, in this constructor we have object as a argument or a parameter. So then here inside this we are assigning values of these variables. So this is an example for a copy constructor. So what is the definition? It is a parameterized constructor where one object can be copied to another object. So this is copy constructor. Now let us see an example here. So it is an example program to show the working of the different types of constructor. So this is function start with the header file, class name is add, inside this private variables, under public add, and this is where name of the class is add here. So it is a default constructor where there are no parameters or arguments. Inside this sum equal to 0, close the constructor. So this is default constructor. Next one is here add, name of the class is same, it is a constructor, but it has two arguments, int x comma int y. There are two parameters or two arguments. It is parameterized constructor. Inside this we are assigning values. Now look at one more function here. It is add ampersand j. If you observe this, add is the name of the class. It is a constructor, but it is a parameterized constructor. Inside this we have add is name of a class, and this is an object. So this is an example for copy constructor. Now then after this we have compute function. In compute, write in the formula sum equal to a plus b, say out sum, close this function, and close the class with semicolon. So this is the program. Next this is the class. In the main function, void main, next one is add obj1. So here if you observe this here, add obj1, obj1 is one object here, and next add obj2 where there are two parameters 5, 10, and obj3 is another object we are using obj2. So if you observe this here, there are three different objects. obj1 where it doesn't have any parameters, it refers to default constructor. It refers to default constructor. And here obj2 with 5, 10, in this constructor will be having two parameters, so it refers to or it points to second constructor, that is parameterized constructor. Next, if you observe this third one here, again it is creation of an object obj3, obj2. So here obj2 itself is an object. We are assigning copy obj2 to obj3. So this is an example for or it refers to or points to copy constructor. Next, obj2 dot compute. We are calling the constructor here, or we are calling the function compute function. So this is how, if you call the function, it's going to display the sum of two variables. So this is a program to, with example program to show the working of default constructor, parameterized constructor, and copy constructor. In the next slide, invoking constructors. Now, once a constructor has been declared and defined into the class, it has to be invoked. And we have learned in the previous slide that when the object is created, the constructor is invoked automatically. So now look at this definition here. A constructor is automatically invoked by compiler when the object is created, or when you declare an object, automatically constructors are invoked. Now it can be invoked by following methods. One is explicit call, implicit call, and initialization at the time of declaration with equals to operator. So there are three methods where we can invoke constructors. Now let us see an example for explicit call here. So look at syntax now. Class name space obj equal to class name with argument. So example, add obj1 equals add 10, 20. So this is explicit call, means the constructors are invoked explicitly. This is one method of invoking constructor. Now second example or second method is implicit call. The syntax is that class name space obj and argument. So if you observe this here add is the name of the class, obj with 10, 20. So this is an example for implicit call, another method of invoking constructors in a program. In the next slide, let us see how to initialize with equals to operator. The syntax is class name space obj equals to argument. Example, add obj equals to 10. So this is another method of invoking constructor by using equals operator. These are different methods of invoking constructors in a program. In the next slide, constructor overloading. Now, what are constructor overloading? Constructors are used to initialize the data members of a class. So this is the basic definition of a constructor. It is used to initialize the object of a class. Depending on the requirement, one can define any number of overloaded constructor in a single class. So it is possible to have or declare more than one constructor in a class by depending on the requirement or the situations. Next, depending on the type and number of arguments passed, the compiler decides which version of the constructor to be invoked during object creation. Now, by passing the arguments, so the compiler identifies which constructor has to be invoked by looking at the argument passed through constructor. Next concept is destructors. What are destructors? A destructor is a special member function that will be executed automatically when the object is destroyed. When the object is destroyed. This is the definition of destructor. Now look at the example here. So class name, private, data variables, member methods. Under public, we have class name. This is a constructor. This is a default constructor where there are no arguments. And here, observe this, the symbol tilde. The symbol with the class name, it is a destructor. It refers to destructor. So destructor starts with a special character. It's called tilde. This is a character. So once the compiler identifies this character, it considers this one as a destructor one. So what a destructor? It is a special member function, will be executed automatically when the object is destroyed. So this is the definition of a destructor. Students, so far we have discussed about the constructors and destructors. Now let us continue our discussion in my next session. Thank you so much.